members come first.
Affinity Plus helped me a lot to pass through this tough time.
My family was negatively affected.
Affinity Plus showed that they are invested in our success.
You are the top priority.
And they did it proactively.
I have found them to be respectful, supportive, and compassionate.
I don't feel judged.
I feel when I go, I'm in safe hands.
And that is why I bank with
Affinity Plus.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first edition of Gopher Review and Preview. Thanks to Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union, I'm Justin Gaard, and we're looking forward to this new venture. Basically, hopefully, going to take you through the next 9 weeks as the Gophers and the Big Ten football play start this weekend. The way it's going to work is we're going to review the game that just happened. In this case, hasn't been a game, so we're going to review a couple of the things that have happened here in the last couple of weeks, and then preview what's to come the rest of the Gopher football season. I want to remind you to check out the mobile app for Affinity Plus. Make it so easy to take care of everything you need to. Very easy to find that as well, however you get your apps. And affinityplus.org is a great place to become a member and really invest in yourself. They've been longtime Gopher football and Gopher athletics supporters and supporters here at the Fan as well now for many, many years. So we appreciate them taking the leap in with us this week and taking the leap this year with this brand new venture, because this is something that we've never done before, a digital show every single week. It's going to be on Wednesday nights is when we're going to drop it on our social media channels. And the way it's going to work is we're going to have a couple of different guests, one from the coaching staff every single week. Today, it's going to be defensive coordinator Joe Rossi. That's in just a minute. And then one of my friends from the Gopher media, in this case, probably my best friend in the Gopher media, a guy that I lean on a lot, Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. So that's what's coming up tonight. That's what's coming up for the next couple of weeks. History is not on the side of the Gophers in this series, no matter how you look at it. Michigan is the opponent, 6:30 at TCF Bank Stadium, and they've won 75 of the 103 games of all time, and 24 of the last 26. Wins have been so rare in this series for the Gophers, unfortunately, that you remember them very vividly. Gary Russell running down the sideline at Michigan Stadium, the one a few years ago with Jerry Kill when the Gophers beat Brady Hoke and basically got him fired. Minnesota has never won a game in my lifetime in Minnesota against Michigan. All their wins, I think 3 victories, 86, 2005, and 2014, all in Ann Arbor. So history not on the side, but we're really looking forward to the matchup tonight. As we move through the show tonight, we're going to preview with Ryan Burns, GopherIllustrated.com. We'll try to learn a little bit about this version of the Wolverines as well as try to answer some questions from you. But I'm excited all year that we are going to have an assistant coach. And today is defensive coordinator Joe Rossi. Since he took over a couple of years ago, you remember that Purdue game in the snow, right around this time of year, Gophers are 14-3. Last year's defense ranked in the top 10 in the country in scoring defense and total defense. They're replacing, though, 7 starters from a year ago, including some big names that played a lot for the Gophers the last few years and made a lot of big plays. We're going to talk about how they replaced that great group, learn about how they prepared for Michigan's new quarterback, Joe Milton, with one of my favorite guys to talk to, Gophers defensive coordinator, Joe Rossi. Well, Coach, I know how I feel that there hasn't been any Gopher football, at least a game, since January 1st, 2020. People always ask me, like, how do the Gophers look? I said, I don't know. I haven't seen them since the Outback Bowl, quite literally. So as a coach and your team, how do you guys feel that now the game is finally right around the corner?
No, it's exciting. Obviously this year has been tough on everyone, across the country. And I think for young people at times, it's even a little bit harder because they haven't had the experiences that maybe some of us older guys have. But I think it's great. Our guys have handled it very well. The different stages that we were in, from the Zoom meetings to where we were able to start working out, and then it became, well, the season's going to be postponed, and then we're possible revival, and then the revival, and then all the work we've been putting in, and now it's game week, and we're excited to have an opponent and excited to have a game.
How has fall camp been in terms of what you would typically do to what you were able to do here the last month or so?
Sure, it was completely different. Obviously, the advantage of a summer camp is that you have the whole day. The players are not in class. When you're doing it now, we only have them in the mornings because we're a morning practice operation.
Right.
And around lunchtime, they're cut loose for the day to go do everything they need to do academically as a student. So you just don't have as much time with them. And so it's, less practices, less meeting time. So that's really the main difference.
And what has it been like to, I think Coach Fleck on the radio show has talked about, this isn't a normal year where you've got your ones and your twos and then your scout team. You're mixing in basically everybody depending on who's there at any given practice. How beneficial, I guess, has that been for you to make sure you're getting reps for every single person? How different has that been?
Yeah, I think, we kind of felt that was going to be the case. Even way back when we were having our walkthroughs in July, which were new this year, we invested in the whole roster, knowing that it wasn't going to just be the ones and twos. It was going to take everyone this year. Someone could be thinking they're not, going to be an impact guy, and then all of a sudden they're called into duty. So you've got to make sure that you're investing in everyone, which we always do. But I would say that we've invested even more. And you need to put plans together for who's available. You can't get upset as a coach. Oh my goodness, that's the expectation. Like there's going to be times when people are out. Who knows? I could be out tomorrow.
Right.
And Coach Fleck and all the staff could be. It's just that's what 2020 is. So when you're aware of it and have prepared for it, then you just put the plan in place when it happens.
I think you said something earlier in the spring about how you've always repped a lot of guys, even in games, especially defensive line. You've tried to mix and match and get a lot of people snaps. And part of that is to keep people fresh, but also it's to get people experience for, I don't know, when 7 starters leave and you've got 4 NFL players and, a handful of guys that were drafted. So what's it been like mixing in those new players? A guy that I've heard a lot about, including from Tanner Morgan last week, was Mariano Sori-Marin, who's a guy who's kind of really stepped into the leadership role. PJ called him Joe Rossi Jr. Should that be a compliment for Sori-Marin, by the way? I mean, how do you take the Joe Rossi Jr. moniker that he's got?
I hope it's for his football acumen. If it's about looks, then it's a big name for him.
So what's it been like to watch his development, even from a year ago? You think about the South Dakota State game to where he came, especially later in the season. How much better did he get, and what are you looking for from him this season?
Yeah, I think that, it's funny with him in particular. In the year before, it was Jordan Howden.
Right.
But it's like when young guys get in and play, just sometimes the outside world is very quick to judge someone's first or second outing, which, I don't know what your first radio broadcast was like. My first coaching gig, the first few weeks didn't go so well. And I would venture anyone who got into something for the first time, like when they first do it, they're not an elite at it. And so, yeah, his first couple starts, he had a lot of growing to make and improvement to make, and he did. He started at every linebacker spot for us last year, which is something to be said for that in terms of his intelligence. Sam, Mike, and Will.
Right.
And then you look at the 2 top 10 wins last year, he was the starting linebacker. And so he made tremendous gains from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And now he's just really kind of stepped into a leadership role. His work ethic is tops. No one outworks him. And when someone has that type of work ethic, you're naturally going to draw people in. And then his ability to communicate, and he's a very intelligent. So he's kind of got all the makings of a leader, and he's really stepped to the forefront for us. I expect him to be even better this year on the field. And, I think he's got a very bright future.
Before we talk a little bit about Michigan, who else are you excited to see play that maybe he's played a little bit in the past or maybe hasn't played at all, that you think they're practicing well, and maybe it's a name that Gopher fans don't necessarily know, but that you say, all right, I'm looking forward to seeing this person or these people play on Saturday night?
Yeah, I think, Sezi, Big O, Atamowo, he's been the 2 for the last 2 years. And I really feel like his time is now to step forward, and he has the job. He's done a great job. He's looked good. Very excited for him. Very excited for, Boye Mafe and Thomas Arash.
Right.
Both of those players have played roles. They've been on special teams. They've rotated in. They've had different jobs, and now they kind of get an opportunity to step to the forefront. And then, now you see those starters, but then the guys that sometimes people don't truly think about, I'm talking about some of the 2s who step forward, become the 1s. Well, who's stepping forward to become the 2s?
Right.
Could be the guys that are going to be rotating in that maybe we haven't seen as much, and on the D line, Rashad Cheney and, Trill, D'Angelo up front, and those guys, they are going to step to the forefront, and we've been excited about what we've seen.
So as you look at Michigan, I know you got to spend a lot of football time this year. Coaches joke that you had a lot of time. You could spend a lot of time breaking down film and everything. But I'm curious your thoughts on this Michigan team. They've got a newer quarterback that hasn't played a lot. I know they're excited about him. They've got some new wide receivers, and they've got a lot of new offensive linemen. So as you try to get ready for all that on top of the normal game one stuff, what kind of challenge has that been?
Well, I think anytime there's an opening game, there's always unknown. Scheme could change, personnel changes. And so, the game plan portion of things maybe isn't quite as, as it would be late in the season. You've got 8 games on someone and you've seen it. So it's more about you. It's about your execution. It's more about your system. Obviously, you know a lot about them. They have new players, but they're going to stay true to their system.
Right.
I'm sure they have some wrinkles and some variety, and they've graduated some players. But I mean, let's be honest, they're going to have some really good players that are going to step in, and so you kind of get a feel for what they're doing, and then you work that against what you do, and that's how you get prepared.
As you try to get ready for the quarterback, for example, who's a highly touted guy, has been in the program now for a couple of years. Do you go back and look at high school stuff? Do you look at spring game stuff from the Big Ten Network? I mean, even to just find what type of athlete this kid is, what type of things he likes to do, or is that too difficult sometimes?
No, we did that. We watch a high school film, and then he's been there. I think this is going on his 3rd year, so
right.
He's been in games in the last 2 years. So we have all of those games, and have watched every snap that he's played. But the thing that I would say about that is, even when you watch someone in that role, when they're the backup, it's different.
Right.
We've been invested in him since the end of last season, and I'm sure what we've only seen on the film of when he was in games before is just going to be partially what he's capable of. So he's talented, he's big, he's strong arm, he's athletic, so he'll be a great challenge.
Well, good luck on Saturday. I appreciate you taking the time. You mentioned first broadcast. This is the first Gophers review preview thanks to Affinity Plus. So we gave it to the guy that we knew could hit the link to get on here. You were voted most likely to be able to hit that link. So congrats on that. Thank you for taking the time, and best of luck against the Wolverines.
No problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
14-3 are the Gophers under that man, Joe Rossi, as defensive coordinator. Always one of my favorite guys to talk to. I appreciate him taking the time to become the first guest on Gophers Review and Preview, thanks to Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. Another one of my favorites is Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. He's going to join me when we come back here. All right, we continue on and we wrap up the first edition of Gopher Review and Preview, thanks to our friends at Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. And I felt like it was appropriate, given that we're going to be talking, I hope, for the next 9-ish Sundays, right around 8:15 on Gopher Football Sunday, 8 o'clock on the Fan and iHeartRadio, to talk to Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. He got the branding message just like I did. I've got my Affinity Plus jacket on. He's got his Gopher Illustrated polo on, but Burnsy is with me every Sunday at 8:15, and I thought he'd be a perfect first guest for the finals. The pandemic and the quarantine, you've handled that a lot better than me. You are ready for TV and prime time. I am not. So whatever you did, congrats. You look tremendous.
Well, that's about the nicest thing I've heard in some time. You got to look pretty when you're going out in a tree stand, right? So
that's true. You got to get those
change my
going.
best with the game here this weekend.
So I do have some questions that people have been kind of sending our way since they found out that you were going to be on there. I'll get to those in a little bit, but we just heard from Joe Rossi, and we talked a little bit about kind of the A topic, and you've talked a lot about it on the Gopher Gridiron podcast as well as the Gopher Illustrated. We've learned that there are 7 new starters on this defense, or at least they're replacing 7 people, including a bunch that are playing in the NFL right now. So what are you most excited about or curious about going into Saturday's game? Is it a position group? Is it a player? Right. Is it a couple of players on the defensive side of the ball? What are you most looking forward to, I guess, on defense?
Trying to see how Minnesota changes within their front 7, because you mentioned it. There's a lot of new guys gone. I think 5 of the 6 starters in the front 6 are going to be gone, with the only returning starter being defensive tackle Micah Treadway. So first and foremost, how does Minnesota generate pressure without Carter Coughlin? Because he was essentially a one-man wrecking crew last year. And is it going to finally be the Boye Mafe breakout, someone that was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks of College Football list? Because it's not every day you find a kid that's 6'4", 260, and he has a 40-inch vertical. I mean, I'm not 6'4". Well, I am 6'4", not 260 pounds, and I can assure you my vertical isn't what it used to be, and it's certainly not 40 inches. He has the physical talents to be a very impactful defensive end, someone that if he hits his ceiling is going to be an NFL guy. But how does Minnesota's new defensive line with Boye Mafe starting and Asezi Otamiwu, who's on the all-name team certainly for Minnesota at that
Yep.
other defensive end spot. He's a guy that physically should have been starting the last couple of years. He's 6'6", 270, whereas Winston Delady-Boudere was 6'1", 250 maybe, but Winston continually played over him. So is Assezi finally ready to make that next move in year 4? I'm excited about Keontae's shot at that 3 technique replacing Sam Renner, but I'm very curious about this linebacker spot because Kamal Martin's now with the Packers. Thomas Barber started 3 years for Minnesota, and all that's left there that has anything resembling experience at the collegiate level linebacker is Mariano Sori-Marin. Now, Joe Rossi, very, very high on him. I know I asked him about that on Gopher Illustrated.
Yep.
He told me he's got expectations for him to be one of the best linebackers in the Big Ten. Now, that would be quite a step up, considering I think up and down would be a very kind way to put his performance last year. But it's that other linebacker spot. Whoever is going to be starting there, whether it's James Gordon, Josh Awney, Donald Willis, or one of the freshmen, maybe Cody Lindenberg or Jaquandis Burns, those 2 freshmen, they're going to be brand new. And how does Joe Rossi, who is so detail-oriented, deal with the fact that there's going to be a lot of inexperience here on his defense this fall? It's going to be something to watch.
Now, I'm going to talk like you now. We know who QB1 is. We know who RB1 is. We know who WR1 and 2 is.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. WR3, maybe it was going to be Demetrius Douglas had he stuck around. I think that was obviously who I thought it would be, given that he's been WR4, I think, the last couple of years. PJ Fleck has talked a lot this week, including on some other work that I do with him about Daniel Jackson. I know it's a name that has come up a lot with you as well, a freshman. Tell us a little bit about that spot. 'Cause on the offensive side, really not a ton of questions after, we want to know who the second running back is or second and third running back, because we know Mo is going to be RB1. But that wide receiver spot after Bateman and after Chris Ottman-Bell, what do you think happens there?
Yeah, Bateman is still going to get a ton of targets. I mean, that's a given. So is Chris Ottman-Bell. But there's going to be a diversification of that Mike Sanford passing pie. And that's where I think it comes down to 3 guys. I think it comes down to the experienced veteran that is Seth Green. Is this finally the year he can break out and actually get meaningful snaps at wide receiver? Because you've seen him be the Wildcat quarterback. You've seen him be incredibly effective at that position in short yardage and goal line situations with the amount of rushing touchdowns that he has. But can he finally take that next step in his route running to where he can become a starting receiver for Minnesota? And if it's not going to be Seth, I think it is going to be one of the two true freshmen in Daniel Jackson or Doug Emlin. Daniel Jackson is someone that had an incredibly productive sophomore year in high school at his place down in Kansas, tore his ACL as a junior, and then had a heck of a senior year where he set the world on fire with 27 receiving touchdowns. And all the word I've heard since he's been on campus is he continues to get better each day, and he gets better each week. And that has continued throughout the entire fall to the point where I think he's probably the odds-on favorite. When you look out there on Saturday night, if you see number 9, which is Daniel Jackson's number, yeah, that's a true freshman out there starting. And if it's not him, I think it's going to be the other one, Doug Emlin, someone that was a very highly thought of prospect coming out of Florida. Minnesota was able to get him and sign him because of the season that they had last year. He's probably a kid that goes to the SEC if it's not for Minnesota winning 11 games. But those are 2 very talented true freshmen, 2 guys that I know PJ Fleck, Mike Sanford, and then wide receivers coach Matt Simon are all very, very excited about. But in that same breath, they're going to be young and they're still going to make some mistakes.
I want to remind people, Burnsy's going to join me Sunday, 8:15 on The Fan. Gopher Football Sunday is that show. This is Gopher Review and Preview. Every Wednesday night, we're going to come to you probably around 7 o'clock as we stream this thing live on all of our social media platforms, thanks to Affinity Plus. They've been great supporters of mine, supporters of Gopher Athletics for many, many years. AffinityPlus.org to invest in yourself and become a member there. We appreciate their support. We've got a couple of minutes left, Burnsy. I want to talk about Michigan. It's always interesting. You look at this series, and I talked about it in the opening. A lot of people are saying, hey, good opportunity. Michigan's a ranked team. They're coming in here. They've got a new quarterback, all this stuff. And you look at it, this is not a series, in our lifetime that the Gophers have had a lot of success in, right? They have not won a game in Minneapolis against Michigan in our lifetime. It goes back to 1977. So, yes, Michigan has a lot of questions, but it's still Michigan at some level. And this series has been dominated by the Wolverines. As you learn about this team and talk to your counterparts on 247 on the Michigan side, what are some things we should know about the Wolverines?
Yeah, I mean, they're a very talented team, but they lose a lot of experienced players from last year's team. I mean, you look at their quarterback, Shea Patterson from last year, he's gone. Their top two receivers from last year, and Donovan People-Jones and Nico Collins, they're gone. And I think maybe the most important thing to note about what Michigan is missing is 4 stud guys on the offensive line. 4 all-conference players from last year's team graduate. They're leaving behind, between the 4 of them, they combined to start 132 games at the collegiate level, which is an insane number. And all that's coming back is 17 career starts, and 13 of them are going to be by Jalen Mayfield, who's their lone returning starter. So you have 4 inexperienced guys on the offensive line. You got a brand new quarterback in Joe Milton, who is very, very talented. Certainly, he was a high 4-star kid coming out of Florida, someone that Minnesota is going to have to really figure out how to combat. He's 6'5", 240, and he loves to use his legs. But when you look at the limited sample size that we have on Joe Milton, he's only thrown 11 passes at the collegiate level, but he's got 2 interceptions. I mean, he's a guy that is very confident in his arm. It's almost Zach Annexted-like, where he thinks he can make any throw on the field. And that's where, if you're Minnesota, you really want to make sure that you get into a positive game script situation where you're winning the game, in terms of you want to be ahead for most of the game so that Michigan has to pass. Because if Minnesota's winning, you look at where Michigan's defensive strengths are. I think the number one matchup that is going to dictate whether Minnesota wins or loses on Saturday night is going to be Michigan's defensive line versus the Gopher offensive line. That is the only place on Michigan's defense that has a lot of returning talent.
Right.
Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye are very, very talented defensive linemen. But Minnesota's also got, in theory, all of their offensive line starters back. And that's where Minnesota is going to have to win in the trenches, because Michigan's defense is replacing 3 secondary guys that are all in the NFL. 3 of their 3 starting linebackers from last year's team are all gone, and it's going to be inexperienced. Yes, they're very talented, but just like Minnesota's defense, it's going to be very inexperienced. So if Minnesota is able to win this game, it's because they're able to win in the trenches on the offensive line and put that Michigan offense that's replacing so much and hasn't played a ton of football into some negative game script situations where you can pin your ears back, try to get after Milton, see if he makes a mistake or two, and then capitalize on the offensive side of the ball.
Bernsey, a lot of people kid me that I have like 15 jobs and around this time of year. It's 100% true. It's absolutely right. But you have a lot of stuff going on as well. Tell people where they can read you, where they can read your tweets, where they can follow you, and of course the Gopher Gridiron podcast, all the things that you're up to as well.
Yeah, if you're on the Twitter machine, which if you are, man, God bless you for being on that as much as Guardsy and I are. But you can follow me at Ryan Burns MN. You can check out my work at GopherIllustrated.com. There's a ton of stuff previewing the Michigan game coming up here this weekend. We also are your authority for anything Gopher football or Gopher basketball recruiting related. Yeah. A lot of good stuff there. It's only $1 if you want to get behind the paywall and really read what my and my counterpart Ryan James's thoughts are on the basketball and football teams here. And then we also have the podcast, as Justin alluded to, Gopher Gridiron Radio. We preview every game. We review every game with what I think is one of the smartest minds in the Gopher football world, and Derek Burns, former Golden Gopher offensive lineman. So if you're looking for intelligent Gopher football talk, check out the Gopher Gridiron Radio podcast.
And watch Gopher Review Preview every Wednesday on all the KFA and social media accounts.
And if you can't wait for that, Gopher Football Sundays, 8:15, 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock on KFAN.
Thanks to Affinity Plus. Who else? Bernsey, you're the best. Stay well, stay healthy. I don't know if I'm even allowed to see you on Saturday at any of these games.
I'll wave at you from the press box when you're down on the field.
I'll be in row 1. I'm not allowed on the field, so I'll be in row 1 probably, and that's just fine. I'm only 5'9". I can see better if I'm going to be in row 1. So when I started the show, I knew you'd have to be on the first one because you've helped me out so many Sundays the last couple of years, and I look forward to doing that again on Sunday at 8:15. Thanks, man.
Appreciate you.
That is Ryan Burns from GopherIllustrated.com. And that wraps up our first edition of Gopher Review and Preview. We'll review the Michigan game next week, preview what the Gophers have going up against Maryland. I'll remind you, a big thanks to our partner on this all season long, Affinity Plus Federal Credit Union. Invest in yourself. Become a member today at affinityplus.com. Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you later.
At Affinity Plus, our members come first.
Affinity Plus helped me a lot to pass through this tough time.
My family was negatively affected.
Affinity Plus showed that they are invested in our success.
You are the top priority.
And they did it proactively.
I have found them to be respectful, supportive, and compassionate.
I don't feel judged.
I feel when I go, I'm in safe hands.
And that is why I bank with
Affinity Plus.